All right, everybody. So welcome once again to Winning the Virtual Career Fair. My name is Chris Fitzpatrick. I'm the manager of University Relations and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Crestron Electronics. Thank you to all the students at Fordham who are joining us here today. I'm going to share my screen and just pull up our presentation, so that way we can start going through some of the content that we have today. Once again, please keep those chat boxes open and let me know if you have questions as we go through. Just type them right in the chat box and we will get to as many of them as we can. One important thing I do want to note about the topic today, the title says Winning the Virtual Career Fair, because this will focus a lot on the fact that your career fair, and in fact, many career fairs recently have been virtual in nature, but a lot of the strategies we're going to talk about over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour also apply just as equally to an in-person event or an in-person career fair. So these are tips and tricks that you'll be able to use even after we go back to an in-person model, hopefully relatively soon. Can you all just give me a thumbs up reaction if you can see my screen okay and everything's coming in right? I got some bunch of thumbs up on the screen. That's great. All right, terrific. So we are in good shape there, and that is excellent. So really quick, also a little bit more about me. I've been in talent acquisition for about 15 years now, a little over, specifically in campus recruiting and early career identification, diversity and inclusion work. I've run internship programs for 15 years. I also work with the veteran community. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite presentations of the last 6 months was with Fordham's veteran population, RAM vets. So I know you all have a really strong population on your campus as well. I also work with a variety of community partnerships and do some organizational development work. So I've had a home in the human resources organization for quite some time. I've probably met somewhere in the range of 35 to 50,000 students at various career fairs in person and virtually over the course of the last 15 years at hundreds of career fairs all across the US. I have also probably done somewhere in the range of about 4,000 to 5,000 interviews over the course of my career. So my goal here is going to be to provide a lot of value to everybody as far as what I've seen, what I've experienced, to help you set yourselves apart from everybody else in a career fair setting. And again, there's always lots of ways to stay in touch with me. You can use the links I placed in the chat, but please connect with me in any of these ways, and I'll be more than happy to keep the conversation going beyond today. All right, so first and foremost, one of the things that I want to touch on is that when it comes to the best practices of a campus career fair, I'm just trying to advance here, there we go. The first thing that I want us all to do is understand that there are distinct stages of any career fair, all right, whether it's in person or virtual. All right. So I want to throw this first topic out here. You see it right here: before, during, and after. They're broken into time frames, okay, or pre, intra, and post. It's important to understand that each of these stages is completely unique and has its own set of best practices. So for a fair amount of time, we're going to go through a discussion of pre, intra, and post. So I'm going to throw the first question out there. And again, I want to invite you to use the chat box to answer this question. Of these three, pre, intra, and post, right? So before the career fair, during the career fair, and after the career fair, which one do you think is most important? Which of these stages do you think most of the victories or losses occur? I see a lot of pre, before, okay? Everyone's saying pre or before. All right, so you're all pretty much going with before. We have an after, okay? Now a couple people are saying after. So nobody is saying during the fair itself. All right, so we have all before and afters. So the fact is that pre-career fair is your most impactful of these three stages. So before the career fair is the point in time where most of these opportunities and these inroads and these real networking connections are won and lost. As a matter of fact, it's really interesting when you think about it, because intra-career fair is a very short period of time, right? Let's think about this. The career fair at Fordham was announced over a month ago. Will, check my math on that. It has to have been at least a month, if not longer, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes. Yep. I was going to say we started plugging it last semester even. So it's been a
Months,
while.
plural, right?
Yes.
Months, plural. All right, outstanding. So there's a 2 to 3 month pre-career fair timeframe. That's a big chunk of time. Post-career fair, if we're being specific, is interminable. There's actually no ending to post-career fair. It just continues on. So the relationships that you build and how you build off of them, how you follow up with them, there's really no amount of time in which that stops, right? There's not like a statute of limitations on how long you're still working with people post-career fair. But intra-career fair, we're talking about 2 to 3 hours. So compared to the pre and the post, it's a minuscule amount of time. And yet most students find themselves focusing on thinking about becoming anxious about that intra-career fair time far more than they do pre and post. And so what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is the importance on focusing on pre-career fair. Now, let's address the fact that now pre-career fair from where we are right now is 24 hours, right? The fair is tomorrow, but you still have time to do a lot of the pre-work that we're going to be talking about. The other thing is that this is probably not the last career fair you're ever going to attend, right? There's a very good chance. As a matter of fact, let's do another little audience participation here. Open up the chat boxes, and I want to know academic years. Are you a freshman? Are you a sophomore? Are you a junior? Are you a senior? Are you an alum? Are you a graduate student? Toss it in there. Got sophomore, junior, sophomore, sophomore, junior, sophomore, senior, senior, sophomore. We're all over. We got grad, we got sophomore, grad student. Okay, outstanding. We're all over the map, pretty much from sophomore to grad student and everywhere in between. I didn't see any freshmen step up. And if there are freshmen out here, please make yourselves known, because as a freshman coming out to events like these and getting yourself prepared is such a there we go. Thank you, Ella. Thank you, Samuel. Excellent. So we do have some freshmen in the room as well. And I applaud you. My hat's off to you, because you're getting way ahead of the curve here. So for most of you, this is not going to be your last career fair. And even for you seniors, this may not be. You may still do these career fairs either as alumni, or if you are doing 4.5 or 5 years, or if you go on to do grad school. So you may be doing more of these fairs as well. And your pre-time for the next career fair has already begun. Even though you don't know when it is, if you assume that there will be one, then your pre-time can start now. So let's talk a little bit about some of the best practices within these distinct time frames. And we'll start with pre-fair. So what you see here are a bunch of the best practices of things that you can do to tackle the time frame prior to the career fair beginning. And right up at the top of that list is researching the attending employers. And Will touched on this a little bit earlier. The Career Center staff, they know who's registered for the career fair. And when you sign into your Handshake account, you're able to see what companies are going to be there because their schedules are posted. You can see who has availability. And in most of these cases, these companies post links to their careers website, or they'll let you know what members of their team are going to be there, so you'll see their names, right? So when you have that information, now at your fingertips, you have a tremendous amount of research that you can do, learning about the company, right? What they put out there, visiting their careers website, just Googling the company, especially if you've never heard of it before, right? I get this one a lot, and I'll throw another question out here for the chat box. How many of you have ever heard of Crestron before? Yes or no? Have you ever heard of my company? Do you know who Crestron is? And be honest. So 2 no's right off the bat. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alex just Googled it right before, you see? All right, so I've got a wall of no's, and I didn't have a single yes to anybody who answered that question when I asked, have you ever heard of my company before? Which means that there are probably a lot of other companies out there you're unfamiliar with, that preparing yourself and doing that research, that is the difference between going in completely blind and going in really well prepared. So then you register for your sessions, right? You've got group sessions, you've got one-on-one sessions. Each of them are valuable in different ways. Group sessions are usually a tremendous opportunity just to get a 30,000-foot overview of a company and to hear a little bit about what the company does, what sorts of students they look for. I will be running group sessions at tomorrow's career fair myself, where I'm going to talk about our internship and our co-op program from a big picture perspective. And then those one-on-one opportunities, that's a chance to get 10 minutes of face time with a hiring manager, a recruiter, a professional, and in some cases, even an alumnus that you can connect with because you automatically have something in common with them. And there's a lot of value there as well. If you sign up for a one-on-one session and you see the name of the person that you're going to be meeting with, where's somewhere you can go to find out more about them? Throw the answer in the chat box. What can you use to your advantage? There you go. Omar, right away, LinkedIn. Correct. If I had a prize, I would toss it to you. That's absolutely right. You can find them on LinkedIn if you know you're going to be meeting with them. And whether you send them a connection request or not, you can still learn at least a little bit about what they do, what their background is, if they're an alum of Fordham, and that way you can connect with them there. It also gives you a chance to update your information. Pre-career fair, it is so important not just to focus on the companies and the employers, but to focus on yourself as well. And I think about this a little bit from a marketing perspective, is you really have to do brand analysis on yourself to understand what information you're putting out there about yourself, what information exists. If somebody were to Google your name, what would come up? Would your social media come up? And is there anything on there that you wouldn't want people to see? So you need to adjust your privacy settings. These are all things that you can think about in that pre-career fair timeframe. And we're going to talk more about LinkedIn in a moment as well. I also want to encourage you all, and Will, this is a plug for you and your team, is if you have not already done so, anytime pre-career fair, get your resume reviewed. Because if you go into a career fair with an unreviewed resume, you may be putting yourself at a little bit of risk if there are typographical errors, spelling errors, or just information that it turns out is not the most relevant that you want to put out there in the career fair setting. So do get your resume reviewed. And again, if you can't do it in time for tomorrow's career fair, think ahead to the fall semester or think ahead to the next Fordham career event that you want to take advantage of and engage your career services team. Go to that career center. Will, just off the top of your head, let me throw a question out there for you. What percentage of Fordham students do you think, and this is probably true of most colleges, what percentage of students do you think engage the career center during their 4 years?
An exact percentage I definitely cannot provide, but I would say not enough.
Okay.
I think we always have room for more students to come visit us. So please feel free to, quick plug to set up an appointment with either myself or a colleague on Handshake. Also, quick plug for our resume rush, which is happening from 1 to 3 p.m. today. And you can sign up for that on Handshake, get a very quick glance over your resume from a career center employee.
Excellent. Will, great plug. Thank you for that. And also, if you remember back to the intro screen, you see that I refer to myself as an aspiring game show host. I'm a bit of a game show fanatic. And I just love that so many of the students took to the chat box to go a little Price is Right here with me. Because when I asked the question about what percentage of students do we think engaged the Career Center during their 4 years, I got Alexandra said 40, Russell said 50, right? Omar, not a lot. I agree with that. We have 30%, we have 70%, and Omar bids $1. Outstanding work. I like Omar, man. He's got a sense of humor about him. Cheers. But let's think about those numbers that you typed in. Let's assume that Samuel's guess was correct, right? And Samuel's in the waiting room, so he's back in now, right? So let's assume that Samuel hits the nail on the head and 70% of all students visit the Career Center. That means 30% don't. Right? So that is instantaneously, if you are getting your resume reviewed and engaging with those Career Center personnel, even in that case, and I think that number is probably a little high, right? But if you can take 30% of the people out of the competition right off the bat, who doesn't want to sign up for that? So please engage that Career Center because you're paying for it regardless of whether or not you use it, right? You are either paying for it or you're making a donation. Right, so I encourage you to engage them. Now, the next piece is the personal SWOT analysis, and I'm going to throw this into the chat box as well, since we're getting a really good response on our audience participation questions here. What is SWOT analysis? What does that stand for? SWOT. A lot of my marketing majors are going to come to play on this one, I'm sure. Let's see who's the first to get it. Omar's on a bit of a winning streak right now. Let's see if he gets it quickly. All right. Oh, James nails it. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And Miles, yes, absolutely. That's your SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, it's important to note that when you come at it from a marketing or a management or an operations standpoint, a SWOT analysis is something that's often looked at as a tool that is utilized for organizations to do an assessment, right? As a company, as a business, as an organization, what do we do well? Where do we struggle? And then what's going on out in the marketplace that we can either take advantage of or try to manage. But the truth is, a SWOT analysis can be a very effective tool for you as an individual and for you as a job seeker. So this is going to be the little bit of homework I'll give you, a little bit of a challenge is prior to the career fair tomorrow, Sit down, take a piece of paper or get on a whiteboard and just make 4 equal quadrants, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and be very honest with yourself and be very self aware. What are some of the things that you think you do exceptionally well that would set you apart from other students who might be looking for a similar job? Maybe it's a technical skill that you've mastered or that you're highly proficient in. Or maybe you're a strong communicator. Maybe you have leadership skills because you've been involved in extracurricular activities, or you're a student athlete, and so leadership is something that comes very naturally to you. It could be any of these things, and really seek to accentuate the discussion about those skill sets when you're meeting with employers at the career fair. With the weaknesses, again, be honest with yourself, because whether it's at the career fair or maybe in an interview setting, you're probably going to have to address them at some point. And the biggest piece of advice here is don't write down your weaknesses because you're going to try to avoid them or that you're going to try and sweep them under the rug. That's not the point. The idea of knowing your weaknesses is to be able to address them and to be cognizant of them. Because when an employer, somebody like me, asks you, well, what is a weakness that you have? What is an area of opportunity that you see for yourself? You need to be able to talk about something that you have honestly identified as an opportunity for you professionally and talk about what you've already done to address it and what you want to keep doing in the future. And there's a lot of out there about, well, what's the right answer to the weakness question? The right answer is the honest answer, right? And the right answer is going to have the follow up about, here's what I've done to address it. And don't try and outsmart the interviewer and say something to the effect of, well, my weakness is I'm too hard of a worker. All right. We get that one a lot. Like, oh, that's my weakness. I work too hard. And first of all, you're trying to turn a weakness into a strength. And we get that. We invented that. We know. But then the other piece is, okay, my follow-up question is, does that mean I need to be worried about you burning out? Does that mean that you work too hard because you lack time management skills and that you are not able to effectively juggle and balance your tasks? So you end up having to work longer or work harder than expected because that's your weakness. And now you're caught in a bit of a loop here. So be aware of the honest to God weaknesses and understand everybody has them, including us, including your professionals and your interviewers. We all have them, and we need to be aware of them too. Opportunities and threats, those are external, those are environmental. You want to be aware of those, but understand that you can't control them. You can take advantage of opportunities to try and turn them into strengths. You can manage threats to prevent them from becoming weaknesses. All right. So those are environmental things that are going on around you. Beyond the SWOT analysis, a couple other things to take a look at pre-career fair is to look at your intro questions. You're probably going to be asked a question, even though I hate this interview question. I wish it would just go away, but you may have somebody in a career fair setting that just says, tell me about yourself. Be prepared for that question and be prepared to speak about job related facts about you. Your academic year, your major, what you're interested in doing, and your professional career path. Try to avoid really overly personal details about yourself. And my piece of advice is also avoid anything that self-discloses any protected information about you, anything having to do with race, gender, culture, anything like that, and keep it specifically job and career and school related. And then finally, check your tech. This is a big one, is wherever it is you're going to log into the virtual career fair from, make sure you're aware of the Wi-Fi strength, make sure you are aware of what your surroundings are, and try to put yourself in the employer's shoes. What are we going to see? What are we going to hear? And are you at risk of having a great conversation with an employer just completely break in the middle of it because your Wi-Fi goes down? And if you feel like you're not in the best place to do the career fair, then seek out a quiet location with some really solid Wi-Fi to be able to do that. Maybe it's an office or a meeting space on campus that you can rent out. Maybe it's a library, right? Maybe it's something at home, but make sure you check that ahead of time because surprise, tech problems happen. So I got a question here in the chat box that I think is really helpful. What is an example of a threat? And Pearl, I love the question. And so let's dive into that for just a moment. An example of a threat. So this is something that is external, right? It's environmental that you cannot control, but you can try to manage. I think right now, one of the biggest threats that we're dealing with is just being in a virtual world, is the fact that there is still a lot of trepidation and a lot of restrictions over being together and being in person. So the threat is dealing with everything we're going through with COVID-19, and how do I differentiate myself over a computer screen, right? How do I differentiate myself to a webcam? Because think about it. Let's take communication specifically. This is a topic that I lecture on a lot, right? I'm going to tell you right off the top, there are 4 major types of communication. There are 4 ways in which we communicate. Does anybody want to guess what those 4 methods of communication are? Toss it in the chat box. Let's see what you get. Okay, so Miles says body language. Miles, you got one piece of the larger one, and Pearl just answered the first 2, verbal and nonverbal. So Miles, you're absolutely right. Body language is one subset of nonverbal communication. Okay, so verbal communication, everything you say, and of course, as my mom always used to yell at me when I knew I was in trouble when I was 8 years old, not just what I said, but how I said it, right? And then you have nonverbal communication, which includes everything from how you dress, eye contact, how you present yourself without words, right? So that's 2, verbal and nonverbal. What are the other 2? Because Pearl and Miles got us on the right track. This is where it gets dicey. Written, thank you. Absolutely, written communication. So this is your resume is a form of your written communication. Your emails, your text messages, these are all parts of your written communication. That's 100% true. And written communication, it's really important. Think about this from a personal brand standpoint. Everything that you write and you put out there is a representation of your personal brand. And I love to share this story. Everyone's going to get a bit of a laugh out of this one. But at a prior company, I had a coworker. Her name was Jennifer. All right, she and I are still close friends to this day. And she was confirming an interview with a candidate over email, and sent him an email saying, all right, you are going to interview with me at such and such a date, such and such a time, such and such a location. And he, on his iPhone, goes to respond to her, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to speaking with you soon. Right? That's what he tries to type into his iPhone because he's in a hurry, he's in a rush, and he's just doing it with his thumbs. And he doesn't proofread the email. He makes one spelling error, but that's okay because autocorrect fixed it for him. Sort of. What he actually ends up sending Jennifer was, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to sleeping with you soon. Absolutely hilarious for all of us involved, but this candidate was absolutely mortified because he didn't proofread his written communication, and now everybody got to have a laugh at this story. And he did still interview. He did not get the job, not for that reason, but you kind of understand he's probably never going to make that mistake again, and I hope you don't either, right? So written communication is part of your brand. So we've got our verbal, our nonverbal, and our written. What is our 4th type of communication? So John says interpersonal, and I think that's a fantastic guess, John. Truth is, all 4 of these are interpersonal. All 4 of these types of communication have some interpersonal nature to them. So that applies across the board. That's a fantastic guess. Let's see, give it one more minute, see if anybody else gets the right answer. And this is, by the way, always the last one. And there's usually a bit of a lag after we get verbal, nonverbal, and written. Because you're asking yourselves, how else do I communicate with other people? How else do I put information out there into the world, right? But it's actually not how we put information out in the world. I want you to turn it around. How do you receive information? How do you take information in? And that's your 4th type of communication. It's listening, right? It's your listening skill. There you go. Akram got it. It is your listening skill set, right? And we frequently hear the term, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a very good reason. It's because we should listen twice as much as we speak. And there's a lot of truth to that. Well, let's take it back to Pearl's question about an example of a threat. Is that having to learn how to communicate virtually in a career fair setting or an interview setting or a classroom setting has affected how we utilize these 4 types of communication. Eye contact is really difficult right now because I think I have eye contact with you because I'm looking at your pictures on the screen, but the only way I can have eye contact with you is if I'm looking at my camera, which means I'm not looking at you. So that's a threat, is nonverbal communication has been altered completely, right? This is just one such example. Now, it can also be an opportunity, right? The virtual communication can be an opportunity. Perhaps you're in a situation where if the career fair were in person, you wouldn't be able to attend, right? So it can be looked at both ways. But what I want to impress upon you, and Pearl, again, thank you for the question, is that a threat is something external that you need to be aware of and manage, so that way it doesn't become a weakness or become an issue. Does anybody have any other questions on the pre-career fair time frame? Because I'm doing a time check. We're at 12:32. We've already been chatting for almost a half hour, and we still have a lot to go. But this is the big stuff, folks. All right. Excellent. And again, if you have questions, type them into the chat box. But let's go into intra. Now we're in that 2, 3, 4 hour time frame where you're actually at the career fair and you're interacting with employers, right? You're going to these group sessions. And in a virtual career fair, a group session is going to be probably more listening, right? You have information being presented to you that is very valuable, and you want to take it in, you want to listen, you want to process it, you want to take your notes. But in those one-on-one sessions, they're happening almost like an interview happens. It's just like a bite-sized micro interview. So practice active listening, right? That fourth type of communication, which means don't focus so much on what you're going to say when it's your turn to speak, but really immerse yourself in what that presenter or what that employer is saying when they are speaking, and think to yourself what follow-ups you might have in the future. But don't start to let your mind wander when you have an opportunity to be present in the moment and to actively listen to that individual. Take notes as necessary. You don't need to copy everything down, but take notes of some of the major points that the employers provide you, because a lot of times those are clues or those are keys for a future interview or an application or how you want to submit your resume. A lot of times we'll give you the answers if you just listen very closely, but you don't need to lose your active listening because you're so busy trying to write down every single word we're saying. All right. When you're asked to share a resume, be prepared to. Now, I get asked also a lot about with the resumes. There are a lot of individuals who may be looking at companies in different in different industries, or they may be looking at two completely different possible career paths, so they have more than one resume, and that's fine. You can absolutely do that, but make sure when you're asked to provide a resume, you're providing the right one. A next level move when you're sharing a resume is if you know that there's a company who's going to be at the career fair that you want to make a very strong impression on, is to have a resume or a cover letter that is tailor made, is specifically addressed to that company. Right? If you are using an objective statement in your resume, to have an objective statement that says, my objective is to earn an internship at your company, right? Don't say at your company, but say the company name, and talk and just have something as to why. Or if you're using a cover letter, having a paragraph about the research that you've done and why you want to be part of the company, as opposed to the generic, let me tell you about myself and why I'm so great. All right. And that has its place, but if you can get specific, that is a differentiator. A very small percentage of students will take that step. The risk, the threat is, if you have 5, 6, 7 resumes and cover letters for specific companies, don't send the wrong one to the wrong company. All right. I actually had somebody come up to me at a career fair once and directly hand me a resume that was to our closest competitor. Right. So be aware of that and make sure you have that organization skill set up for when you're, which conversation you're in. Like one of my biggest fears, and I don't know how many of you have ever seen the movie Spinal Tap. And I know it's weird to hear a Spinal Tap reference in a career fair presentation, but whenever I'm presenting to college students, I have this unnatural fear of accidentally saying the wrong college. Right? Like I was really concerned that I was going to come onto the Zoom screen and say, "All right, Rutgers, here we go," and then you all would have absolutely hated me. So you have to be organized in your thought process and make sure you're providing the right information to the right people. And then answer questions honestly, just like with an interview. You want to be your authentic self, and I'm a big proponent of authenticity in a job search, in an interview, and at work itself. Because if you are answering questions based on what you think the right answer is or what the other person wants to hear instead of how you actually feel or what your skill sets actually are, then A, you're compromising your authenticity, maybe your values, but also very importantly is you could end up getting a job or getting a job offer that's not a good fit for you anyway. And 6 months down the line, you realize you're miserable. Or 6 months down the line, the employer realizes, gosh, they don't have the skill sets that they said they had in the interview. So maybe this isn't the right person for the role. So don't be afraid to be your authentic, honest self in a conversation. Now, be the professional you, right? You can be authentic while also not being the Saturday night with your friends authentic, right? There's different layers to authenticity. So I always say, be the most professional version of yourself while also still being yourself and who you are. Okay. Any questions on intra-career fair? We're actually at the career fair 2, 3, 4 hours. Any questions on this phase of the career fair? And we'll get into post. What are the best
I have a
questions
question
to ask?
actually.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Valentina.
What would be an inappropriate question or a question that you automatically will think this candidate is not a good candidate for my company?
So if just so I understand, it's the questions that you're going to ask the employer what would be appropriate to ask or what would be inappropriate for the employer to ask.
For me to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, and also we have here, Sarah has something similar in the chat box, right? So there's a lot of questions about questions, which is existential. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think that any questions that you can be prepared to ask in a career fair setting that calls upon the research that you've done is very valuable, right? So I was on your careers website and I noticed that your company is known for this. Can you tell me a little bit more about how I might contribute to that project? Or if I were to apply for this particular internship or this opportunity, what could I be expected to do on a day-to-day basis? Now, it's important to note, you may not get the answer to your question right then and there, right? If I'm doing a one-on-one conversation with you at a career fair, let's just say hypothetically we're chatting, and you ask me that exact question, my response is I don't know, because we have 100 different internships that are almost completely unique. So that's going to be a question for a hiring manager. But that person might know, and it's good to ask, what might I be contributing or what projects might I be working on? I also think it's good to ask questions about, tell me about the culture, or tell me about the values. What does success look like at your organization, right? If I were to intern or if I were to come to work full time for your organization, what would it mean to be successful there? What do you feel like the organization values there from its employees? And I think those are all appropriate questions. I think it's also important just to mention that you want to stay from anything that is overly personal, right? So if you you don't want to get into topics about the person's family life or anything like that. Keep it centered around the company, the job, the school, the major, the career path, and I think that will set you up pretty well. Be prepared with, let's say, 4 or 5 questions ahead of time. And even if you only get to 2 to 3, then you still have a few in your back pocket for the next conversation. Christine asks, is it appropriate to directly ask for contact information? And I think the answer is yes, but it also depends on how you frame it. I think that the most appropriate way to ask that question is, how can I best follow up with you? Is there a way I can keep in touch with you? And let that individual decide what the best way to do that is. Not everyone wants to give out a phone number. Some people want to do email addresses. For some folks, they want you to go and apply onto the website. There's a whole variety of different ways that you can do it. How do you bring up the information that you research without coming across too aggressive? I think it's hard to come off too aggressive when you are essentially saying to an employer, I did my homework, I did my research because I'm really interested. So I think just presenting it as, I was very interested in learning more about your organization. I took it upon myself to do some prep work and to do some research. Here's some of the things I found out, and I'd love to hear more about this. Right? That's a great way to approach that topic, because it shows I did research, and it's not just, hey, let me tell you all the things that I did so that way you can check off the boxes, did research. I'm admitting Rod, he's one of my colleagues. I also see we have Christian Bliss here in the room who's joined me. Christian, how are you, man? And Christian says a good tip for avoiding sending the wrong cover letter and resume to a company is to save the file with a basic name format. And I think that's a really solid best practice, Christian. I appreciate you bringing that up to everybody. All right, so great questions, everybody. Really solid. I also see where we are on time. We got about 20 minutes left. And I also want to cover post-fair. So I'll just advance our slide here. And after the career fair is over, congratulations, you had done your homework and you presented yourself well and you did everything that was asked of you. And now it's after the career fair and you have to do your follow-up work, or not do your follow-up work and waste the opportunity. And right off the bat, using LinkedIn effectively is a major part of post-career fair. Let me ask this question, and I'm going to ask you to use the reactions tab on this one. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? And I'll see how many hands up. I got a whole bunch of them already coming in. 5, 9, 10. Okay. I got some applause. So somebody's very excited about their LinkedIn profile, which is great. 23, 27. All right. So the numbers just keep going up. So almost all of you have them. Okay. Hands down. I got about 40 people out of the 51 participants say that they have a LinkedIn profile, right? So now here's the next question, and I'm going to just lower the rest of the hands that are still up. Now raise your hands if you can tell me that your LinkedIn profile is 100% complete. Professional headshot, prior information, education, groups. Come on, everyone, just hit the you just did it. Omar says it's always a work in progress. Omar, we're going to come back to that in a minute. Yes, you're right, but there is, LinkedIn has a meter that tells you if your LinkedIn profile is 100% complete. Doesn't mean that you're never going to change it, but that all of the sections are filled out. I've got 2 hands up, 3 hands up, 4 hands up, 5. Okay. So that's 1/8 of the response that I got to the prior question. Do you have LinkedIn? 1/8 of you said it's 100% complete, meaning all sections are filled out. Well, that's part of your pre-work, is make sure that your LinkedIn is as close to 100% complete as possible. So that way, during your post-career fair work, you're in a position to be able to reach out to those employers you want to stay in contact with and put your best foot forward. Remember, your LinkedIn profile is part of your written communication, and that is part of your individual personal and professional brand. Right, so that is important to note. I also want to go back to Omar's point. It's always a work in progress. That is 100% true, but so is your resume, right? Your resume, your LinkedIn profile is what we refer to as living documents, where they're constantly being updated with new information. And you may change them fairly frequently, but they can still have a sense of completeness to them. Are there any negative implications for not having a LinkedIn account? That's a really good question. Not necessarily, aside from the fact that it's a bit of a missed opportunity, right? Basic LinkedIn is free. You don't have to spend any money on it, and it gives you yet another layer to be able to network. And let's just think about the job search, right? Let's take the career fair out of it. In the job search, what you are able to do is identify alumni from your university, clubs or organizations that you're a part of, who might be references for you or might actually be able to refer you to a position directly, right? In my internship program, I'll have 100 interns in 2022. 20 to 30 of them were referred by other employees who they had a strong network with. So don't lose out on that opportunity. If you don't have one, does it mean that you're unemployable? No, absolutely not. You still have a good shot if you have a strong resume and a good interview, but it is an opportunity. All right, so really good questions, everyone. I appreciate that. Also, you see send just thank you follow-up notes, a quick email to the employer saying, hey, it was great meeting you. I'm looking forward to following up, or letting them know I went ahead and applied for that position you told me about, is absolutely appropriate. I think we're past the point of written notes. I don't think written notes are appropriate anymore, especially because you never know who is in the office and how often. So a written note might not get to them by the time a decision's made, but an email follow-up is definitely appropriate. Right? Apply to the roles that you A, are interested in, and B, are qualified for. And whatever you do, don't close any doors and don't burn any bridges. What does that mean? It means that if you identify that that company is not the right fit for you, or that they don't have a job that you're interested in right then and there, that's fine. But still send that follow-up note, use LinkedIn appropriately, because you never know when the individual who met with you might be at a different company that you are interested in, or that company opens up a new opportunity that you want to be considered for. And how you presented yourself and your brand could be the difference between whether or not they think of you and reach out to you, or when you reach out to them, they say, oh yeah, I remember having a great conversation with you. Let's have that conversation now about this new role. Right? I just hired a young lady into our internship program whom I had met and had a really good conversation with back in the fall. We didn't have a role open for her at the time, but she made such an impression on me that when we did open up an opportunity and I saw her application was still in the pile, I called her directly and said, hey, I just had a role open up. Take a look at this. Does it interest you? And sure enough, she got hired into it 2 weeks later. All right. So that is post-career fair. Let me see what other kind of questions we have here. How does post-networking look like? What kind of message do you send after some time? And I would think the kind of message is really just, it was really great meeting you. I enjoyed hearing more about the company, more about the opportunities, and I hope to continue to be able to connect and follow up in the future. If there's a specific job that you talked about or that you applied to, it's appropriate to say, I look forward to hearing back from you about my application for the cybersecurity professional, the data engineer, or the marketing professional, whichever role it is, and use that job title. I also think it's appropriate to say, can you tell me a little bit about what the application and interview process is for the role? When could I expect to hear something back? Right now, you don't want to start emailing every other day and say, hey, I haven't heard anything back yet. Hey, I haven't heard anything back yet. For each of these 100 internships that I'm going to have this year, I will average between 80 and 130 applications. Some of the roles will get upwards of 300 to 400, so it can be very competitive. I think it's appropriate then to follow up after a week or so, right? Maybe a week or two, especially if you've put in an application. So that's the time frame, a little bit about the time frame. What are some ways that I can really stand out to employers as a freshman? Ella, great question. First and foremost, I think just going to the career fair and coming to events like this, you are already accomplishing that. You're standing out as a freshman. But I think part of the challenge is, well, I haven't taken the same level of courses that the juniors and the seniors have, and I haven't had an internship already. So what am I really populating on my resume, my LinkedIn? And this is why I'm a really big proponent of getting involved in clubs and organizations, getting involved in volunteer activities, because it does show that you're interested in a variety of things and that you're building what I refer to as human skills. You may know them as soft skills. I'm trying to get that out of the lexicon, trying to do away with soft skills, because I think it unfairly diminishes the impact of soft skills. But showing that you're really working on building your teamwork, communication, time management skills like that, and highlight those abilities. Also, your classroom projects. If you have a team project or a group project where you're using a particular technical skill, or maybe you're presenting in front of the class, don't be afraid to put that on your resume, especially if it's in absence of some other work experience that other people may have. And if you are applying for roles as a freshman, and you're just not getting the response you would like, you're not getting those callbacks, please don't be discouraged, right? It is not personal. It probably just means that it's part of the technical competencies, or it's part of the experience, but you're still getting on the right people's radar. So don't close doors, don't burn bridges, don't be discouraged. Keep trying as much as you can to make inroads with those employers. Right? How do you follow up appropriately past the thank you note step? And I would say, again, waiting maybe a week or two and just say, I just wanted to send one more note of follow up. I'm interested in continuing to hear more about your company, or about when opportunities will be posted, or I went ahead and applied for this role. I'd love to hear a little bit about what the time frame is, and if there's anything else that I can provide to support my candidacy for the opportunity. All right, just a few best practices and tips of the trade there. So I want to advance our slides a little bit, just because we still have a few more things to cover. That's the bulk of the presentation and the discussion, right? Is that looking at that that intro, and that post. But a couple other things I just want to highlight is, once again, remember that that preparation stage is the biggest part of the win or the lose in the career fair equation. So just bear that in mind, is that your preparation, even if you don't spell it out directly, will shine through in your discussions. All right. It's also important to remember to have that LinkedIn profile set up. So you have time, you have 24 hours before the career fair. So if you have a LinkedIn that you think could use a little bit of TLC, log on there today, log on tonight after you go to that resume event from 1 to 3 o'clock today, and really update that and make sure that you think you're putting your best foot forward as far as your LinkedIn profile goes. All right. I also want to make one point about traditional career fairs versus handshake career fairs or virtual career fairs. And it is important to note that when you have a traditional career fair, it's usually in a large space like a cafeteria, a gym, or an event center. People are walking around with copies of their resume in a folder, and they're going up to companies, they're standing in line, and they're having conversations. And at a traditional career fair, you may have 5, 6, or 7 different companies that you know you want to go talk to and you know you want to meet with, and that's great. Traditional career fairs, though, do offer the opportunity for what I refer to as the accidental conversation. Oh, you know what? I just saw that this company has a table here. I don't know anything about them. They don't have a line right now. Let me take advantage of the opportunity while I'm here and go talk to them and drop off a copy of my resume, because you never know what's going to happen, right? And that's absolutely true. With a virtual career fair, you do not have that accidental conversation ability, right? That is one of the caveats to the virtual career fair that is very difficult to replicate, is just the ability to go and learn more randomly by stopping in and dropping in and talking to another company. So all of your conversations in a virtual career fair are scheduled, and they are intended, right? These are intentional discussions, which means that your research is even more important than it would be at a traditional career fair. Number 3, going back to the personal brand piece, we talked about this with regards to the SWOT analysis and a lot of those other, understanding what's out there about you, your social media, your LinkedIn profile, and everything like that. But there's one other piece I want to bring up, is that when you schedule yourself to attend a group session or a one-on-one session, especially with the one-on-one sessions, it's important to note that if you schedule that 10-minute time frame with the employer, nobody else can schedule that time. And aside from an actual real emergency where you just can't make it on, if you decide, yeah, the company really didn't do it for me, I just had that time scheduled because I thought I might be interested, but I heard something from this other company and this is the one I want to go with, so I'm just not going to go to that career fair time slot. First of all, you're doing damage to your own brand, right? Because now your name will be remembered by that recruiter or that manager. And incidentally, we all talk. I will get that email, right? One of my colleagues is actually on this presentation right now. His name is Rod, and he's a talent acquisition professional on our team. He was at a career fair just a week and a half ago for us with a school out out in Texas. And I got notes over Microsoft Teams. This person, no show, didn't keep their appointment. That person is all but blacklisted, right? When you think about it, is who's going to want to talk to somebody unless they have a really good reason they couldn't make it. It also impacts the brand of the school, because as I'm deciding what career fairs to attend or what events to go to, if I know that we're going to get 30 students sign up for a group session and 28 of them are going to show up, I am really excited about that event going to that school. But if I know that I'm going to bring my hiring managers there and they're going to sign up for 30 one-on-one slots and 10 of them are going to no-show, and that 33% of that time is going to be wasted, how keen do you think I am to go back and go to that career fair again in the future? How excited am I to return to that school? So bearing in mind, not only do you have your own personal brand on the line, but you're also carrying the brand of your college and your university. And there's a lot to be said for that as well. All right. Best practice number 4, set and remember your goals. This is important to realize that you're probably not going to walk out of the career fair with a job offer. All right. It is rare. It happens. But just like the resume doesn't get you the job, the resume gets you the interview gets you the job. That's also true with career fairs. You can unquestionably set yourself apart in a good way or a bad way. But your goal at the career fair is to make inroads and to network with other professionals and to learn more about a company, so that way you can follow up with an interview and then achieve getting a job. So if you don't have a job offer at the end of the career fair, not a failure, right? So don't worry about that. Set realistic goals, remember what they are, and then execute on those goals. Number 5, please remember that we were once in your shoes. I bring a lot of alumni out to these career fairs because they can empathize with you specifically and your experience at your school. I think there's a certain an anxiety, a nervousness that goes along with coming to a campus career fair. Please understand, we are there to find talent. We know where you're at in your career and in your life, and we were all there at one point as well. A lot of the employers you will meet will be empathetic to that. And if they're not, if they don't show that understanding or that empathy, and they're not having a conversation with you that feels comfortable and feels like a positive place to work, then maybe that's not the company for you anyway. And then last but not least, when you get to the end of the career fair, sit down and really look back on the experience, debrief with yourself, and think about what worked, what didn't work, what you would do differently for next time. Because the post-career fair timeframe that will occur tomorrow afternoon when the Fordham Fair ends also directly leads into the preparation for your next career fair. Those post and pre-career fair times intersect. So as soon as you're done with this fair, regardless of the outcomes, if you have an internship that you are really excited about, or you make great connections with a company that you want to follow up with, remember that if you ever go to another career fair in the future, your preparation time has already started and you're already on the clock. All right, so we're at 12:57. Again, you all had some really terrific questions that we got into, and I totally understand that a lot of you have some events that you have to get to. I'm going to stop the share and just bring everybody back to the main room. All right, and I want to invite you once again, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat box. I also want to see, is anybody who wants to turn their camera on, I would love to grab a quick screenshot with everybody as well. But I am also going to stop the recording so that way we can do a little bit of just networking and a little bit of Q&A. But I want to thank everybody for spending some time with me, taking your lunch break, your afternoon out, and hopefully everyone got some really good information about best practices for career fairs. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I can't wait to see a bunch of you tomorrow. So thank you so much.